These days, wood chips really do dominate modern gardening advice. They're sold, delivered, branded, and, well, endlessly recommended. But, for most of agricultural history, farmers actually made a point of avoiding them around food crops. Instead, folks relied on a mulch so effective that it rebuilt soil, regulated moisture, suppressed weeds, and amazingly fed crops without causing nitrogen theft. This mulch was so common, nobody even bothered to name it as a technique. It was, quite simply, just how you kept the land alive. The material in question was fermented leaf litter mixed with field residues, what old records often called black fall cover or rotted forest dressing. And you see, it didn't come from trees that were cut and chipped, but rather from forests allowed to decay naturally. Once this method disappeared, soil problems soon followed. And modern gardening, well, it started solving issues that the ancient systems never really created in the first place. Forest-derived leaf mulch really worked because it matched soil biology rather than fighting it. The key difference between wood chips and forest floor mulch is not appearance, but biology. Wood chips are mostly lignin-heavy heartwood designed by nature to resist decay. When placed on soil, they demand nitrogen to break down, often robbing crops at the root zone. Ancient farmers actually knew this without chemistry. They avoided fresh wood around crops and instead used leaves, bark fragments, seed husks, and fine twigs that had already begun breaking down. This material fed fungi rather than bacteria, encouraging the same soil networks found in forests. These fungal systems transport nutrients, regulate moisture, and bind soil into stable aggregates. Modern gardens using wood chips often struggle with slow breakdown and uneven fertility. Leaf-based mulch avoided these issues entirely. The lost mulch was always partially decomposed before it touched the soil. Fresh leaves were rarely applied directly. Instead, they were gathered, piled, and allowed to soften through moisture and microbial action. This early fermentation removed bitterness, collapsed air spaces, and initiated fungal colonization. By the time the mulch reached the garden, it no longer blew away, matted excessively, or repelled water. To apply this today, you simply collect fallen leaves, mix them with small amounts of grass clippings or plant trimmings, and moisten the pile lightly. Then allow it to sit for several weeks until it darkens and becomes pliable. This step alone really separates the ancient method from those modern shortcuts we see so often these days. One of the strongest historical arguments against using wood chips near crops was, nutrient competition. Ancient texts actually describe crops yellowing under timber cover, yet thriving under leaf dressing. The reason for this is quite simple, really. Leaves contain balanced carbon and nitrogen ratios compared to wood. When they're partially decomposed, leaves release nutrients gradually, instead of, locking them away. Modern gardeners can test this easily. Just apply fermented leaf mulch around your vegetables and, compare the growth to beds mulched with wood chips. The difference really shows within a single season. Growth is steadier, leaf colour stays deeper, and, You'll notice you don't have to water as often. Moisture control was honestly where this mulch truly excelled. Forest floor mulch absorbs water, holds it, and then releases it slowly. Unlike wood chips, it doesn't shed moisture or form those pesky dry pockets. Ancient farmers really valued this, especially in dry regions where, irrigation was limited. The mulch acted as a sponge layered over soil, protecting roots from temperature swings, while, also preventing evaporation. To use this effectively, apply the mulch in a thick but breathable layer, several fingers deep, never compacted. The soil beneath should be moist before application. Over time, the mulch collapses naturally, feeding the soil rather than needing replacement. Weed suppression came from exclusion rather than smothering. Wood chips suppress weeds by weight and shade. Forest-derived mulch suppresses them by denying germination cues. Weed seeds struggle to sprout in biologically active mulch dominated by fungi and microbes. Many seeds rot before establishing. Ancient gardens maintained clean beds without disturbance because the mulch layer stayed intact all year round. Modern gardeners can, achieve the same result by replenishing lightly rather than stripping mulch away each season. One overlooked detail in historical systems is that roots often grew into the mulch layer itself. This only happens when the material is biologically safe. Roots tend to avoid fresh wood chips, but they readily colonize fermented leaf matter. This, in turn, expands the effective soil volume and, improves drought resistance. To encourage this, avoid separating mulch from soil with fabric or barriers. The system works because, over time, soil and mulch become one living layer. As cities expanded and mechanization increased, leaves became waste instead of resource. They were burned, removed, or composted elsewhere. Wood chips replaced them because they were convenient, not because they were better. What was lost was not a material, but a philosophy. The forest floor was no longer studied. Gardening became extractive rather than accumulative. This lost mulch still outperforms wood chips because it actually builds soil instead of just decorating it. Wood chips, they make gardens look tidy, but forest-derived mulch that makes soil function correctly. One is cosmetic and the other is structural. Ancient farmers, they chose function because, honestly, failure meant hunger. Reintroducing this method, it does not require abandoning modern tools. What it really needs is restoring respect for slow decay, fungal life, and, materials that truly belong where food grows. If this deep historical insight adds value to how you approach soil and long-term resilience, do consider subscribing to Hydrohaven for more forgotten techniques that still outperform modern fixes. And please share this guide with those who care about soil that improves with time rather than demanding constant input.